Good morning, everybody. Adam Jarchow is my very special guest today, Thursday, December 30th, 2021. For DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden, and you are watching DrydenWire Live, an unscripted, casual conversation-style video podcast. If you are unable to watch this show live, or the entire show live, no worries. You can watch a recording later today on our website at DrydenWire.com, our Facebook page under our, I think it's our video tab or our live video tab, or on our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube and search DrydenWire, or it's just youtube.com/DrydenWire. Or if you don't want to watch a recording, you can also read portions of this show with Adam's words taken completely out of context in news stories from other media outlets in next week's news cycle. You know what? Now I think about it, I think I wrote that down sarcastically. I was not supposed to read that. Adam, good morning. How are you?
I'm great, man. How are you?
I'm fantastic. How was your Christmas?
It was awesome. It was nice. We rented a little cabin for a couple days and got out of Dodge and spent some time with the kids out on the northern Wisconsin lake, ice fishing and sitting by the fire. Yeah, it was really nice. How
Sounds
about yours?
terrible. That's wait. you rented, so you went up. You said northern Wisconsin. You live in northern Wisconsin.
Yeah, we went further north. We were up by Clam Lake in the Shawamigan National Forest.
Sure. And, okay, you say you rent a cabin?
Yeah.
So you have a roof, indoor plumbing, and climate control, right?
Correct.
That's all I need to be out in nature. It's just those three things. Yeah. So it's been a couple of months since you were on last.
Mm-hmm.
So before we get into anything, I got to start out right away. Last time you were on, you were going to go hunting. Oh, by the way, did you get any, I don't know, did you kill stuff, deer and things?
I did not get a deer this year.
Oh.
I didn't see any nice bucks, and I passed up all the small bucks and does. And so, yeah, I'm going to be light on venison this coming year.
Well, I've heard of people, because I don't hunt, but I've heard that before from others, passing up on smaller deer.
Mm-hmm.
Why? And I'm not saying it's sarcastic. Like, I don't really know. Why? Is it because you're really just looking for what are those things? The horns or something?
Yeah, I've been hunting since I was like 12 years old, so I've shot plenty of deer in my life, and now I kind of like to be out there, and if I see a nice big one that's a trophy, I will take it, or sometimes I'll shoot something just if we're running low on meat. And this year, all the times that I saw something that might be worth getting, it was kind of like, oh, I got to work tomorrow morning. I'll do it. I'll do it the next day. Or It was warm early in the season and I didn't feel like butchering it right away. And so I just was kind of a lazy hunter this year.
Well, I bring that up because on our last show, you had officially filed how was it worded? The necessary paperwork to run for Attorney General for Wisconsin. But you were committal, but kind of sort of not committal. There were some other things, and that was the last show. That's really all we talked about. But you were going to go hunting. I think you were waiting to see if somebody else was going to jump in the race. I believe that person didn't. I know there was one specific person, and they didn't. But when you got out of the deer stand, you were going to make a decision. Have you officially made a decision? Are you running for Wisconsin Attorney General? Is there any way that you would drop out, or not drop out, but say, okay, no, I'm not going to anymore? Are you officially running?
Yeah, I've been doing a whole bunch of events around the state and getting kind of a campaign apparatus set up, hiring the people that you need to hire to run a campaign, and just the nuts and bolts of a campaign. You have to put together a Facebook page and a website and get events set up. And so there's just a lot of that we've been doing behind the scenes, and we'll have kind of that official campaign announcement sometime in the first couple weeks of January.
Why first couple weeks in January? Is there a strategic reason for that?
No, well, kind of. Nobody cares about politics during Christmas time. So
good point.
So we just kind of decided that it wasn't worth doing, right now. Well, people are focused on more important things in their life, like their families and friends and Christmas. And so we'll kind of get people back to work and acclimated to real life again, and then we'll announce a campaign.
So this is, since, again, our last show on October 28th, so you are going to run, or you are running for Wisconsin Attorney General. What changed since our last show 2 months ago?
Nobody else got in the race, and that's what I had talked about was I felt it was really important, still feel it's really important for voters to have a choice in this race. We've got big, important issues to deal with in this state and in this country. And I don't think it's right in this environment that we don't have a choice, particularly as Republican primary voters, that we just, kind of have essentially a coronation of one person as opposed to having a vigorous debate to make sure that primary voters end up with not just somebody with an R behind their name, but a proven, tested conservative.
Sure. Is that what you would consider? So you're running for Attorney General, Josh Kaul, Democrat, current Attorney General. But you're also, as you just brought up, it's a primary race, and there's another Republican. I forget his name, Eric something, Tiny, maybe? I don't remember his name. No, what is his name?
I don't remember.
Okay. All right, got it. Got you on that one. How does that work? What is your biggest challenge when it comes to running for this when it's, I can't really focus necessarily on Josh Kaul or the Democrat yet, right? Or can you? But because you also, I can't get to there unless I win the primary first. How does that work? What is your biggest challenge in this race? Or do you think
I think we do have to focus on Josh Kaul. As a private citizen, I was not shy to use my First Amendment rights and talk about whatever I thought was appropriate to talk about, whether they were Republican candidates or Democrat candidates or elected officials. But as a candidate for this office, I think it's really important that we spend time talking about our vision for the office. So that's what I'm focused on, is talking about what I want to do with this office and talking about the miserable, terrible, awful failure that Josh Kaul has been as our Attorney General, and why law enforcement from across the state, Democrat and Republican, think that his time as Attorney General has been an absolute disaster. And it's funny, I've called probably about half the sheriffs in the state, and I've got the other half on the list to call. And even when I talk to Democrat sheriffs, they are not impressed with Josh Kaul. They think he's pretty awful. And a lot of them politically can't really talk about it publicly,
right,
because of the politics of wherever they might be sheriff.
Yeah.
But it is very clear that these folks are not impressed with Josh Kaul.
So let's get to Josh Kaul and what your vision is. But before that, I just want to quickly touch on, I kind of jokingly, referenced it in the intro here, but you've been on DrydenWire Live many times. You were on one of the guests or panel, kind of as it were, on our Politically Speaking show with Patty Shockner, former Senator Patty Shockner, which we've kind of put a pin in that just because it's kind of takes away the whole point of the show. If somebody's running for something, we have a lot of content, a lot of things that you have said on the shows, and there has been some media outlets, and I don't know about the campaign stuff, maybe there's some of that too, from the other side, but in terms of other media outlets, there has been a few that have taken some of your words and kind of taken them out of context. And I'm wondering, one, is that just, hey, all fair in love and war and politics? And also, do you think this hurts you when that stuff happens?
Yeah, everything is fair in politics, right? You better have thick skin if you're going to put your hat in the ring. And it's perfectly fair for people to watch every single one of those episodes. Mm-hmm. And if you can't watch, I don't know how many we've done over the years. There's probably 10 or 12. Yeah, if you can't watch 10 or 12 of those episodes, mm-hmm. And look at my voting record in the legislature and look at what I've written and said publicly, I've written a lot of op-eds, mm-hmm. and get a pretty good sense of who I am, then I think you're not paying attention. I've spent a fair amount of time letting people know exactly who I am, exactly what I believe. And if the voters in August, the Republican primary voters, decide that I'm the right choice based on my conservative record in the legislature and sort of my body of work as a small business owner and an attorney, and what you and I have talked about over the years and the op-eds that I've written, that's great. If they decide that they want the other candidate, that's fine too. I can live with any of those things. What's frustrating, I think, for anyone in politics, not just me, is when people take what you've said and twist it into something that's clearly not what you've said and clearly not what you believe, and try to score political points that way. That's frustrating. I mean, it's part of the game. It is what it is, but it's frustrating. Yeah.
Well, you have one of the articles I read was kind of going after you a little bit regarding your stance on law enforcement. And anybody that knows you, of course, knows you have been a supporter of law enforcement for at least as long as I've known you, and I'm sure longer than that, but I've known you for about 5 years. and everyone that I know that is in law enforcement or judges or DAs, etc., that know you all say the same thing. This is just a very do you know Adam? But there were some that were kind of questioning that. So when it comes to those, and I get it's all fair in politics, but when it's one of those, is it okay? That really burns me up.
It burns you a little bit because you're frustrated that something that clearly is false and ridiculous gets put out in front of people who might not know you, and so that's their perception. And when the headline is intended to be inflammatory or incendiary, it's just kind of absurd. But again, that's just the world we live in, and the point of a campaign is to go around and make sure that people know who you are and understand you and be open and accessible. And what I've told people is, I'm open and accessible. You want to see what I've said on DrydenWire? Go watch. It's on the YouTube channels. You want to see what I've written? Go read it. It's out there. I've not hidden anything, and I'm still very active on social media, setting forth my views on things, and I will continue to be that way. And again, if Republican primary voters decide that that I'm the right choice, that's great. If they decide that somebody else is the right choice, I can live with that. What I can't live with is the idea that we're not going to give people a choice. I think in our society, people ought to be able to have a choice for who they want to work for them in elected office.
Speaking of which, if anybody's watching that has a Twitter account, yeah, they should follow you. That is, you're my favorite account to follow. And I follow a lot of them, but that is so fun. It's like my morning reading. 4:20, my alarm goes off, my coffee is up by 4:30, and then I go to Twitter and I'm like, what did Adam say? I love going through that. You have also, I think it was Chris Fitzgerald was one who first clued me in on this. It was, I think, a show on our Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy show a couple weeks ago. Your name came up, and he had stated that he saw something that you had posted on Facebook. It was about bonds. And bonds is one of those topics that like every time we post a story, because our bread and butter a lot of times outside of politics and government is crime and court. So we'll do these original articles in crime and court, and the bonds, that's usually like the most common reference in the comment section on Facebook on those posts is about bond. Either they're just railing on the judge or way to go judge. So it's a very, it's on a lot of people's lips and minds, and it concerns a lot of people. I went to your site. I saw a little bit about bonds. I want to talk a little bit about that. So for people who don't know, which I think most people kind of do, how the bond process works, if you want to kind of just what is the bond situation and like a typical situation where a bond gets placed. And then let's get into what is currently wrong with the way that it's currently set up.
Yeah, it's a way to have to avoid, for people who are accused of a crime, pretrial detention, right? You have a bond amount, and then you have the stipulations that they have to follow in the bond, and if they don't, then they lose that amount. And so what really brought this, I think, to the forefront for people was the Waukesha massacre. Yeah. We had Darrell Brooks, who everybody now remembers or knows had a 50-page rap sheet. He had just been arrested in Milwaukee County for seriously abusing his girlfriend, punched her in the face and ran her over. And that was the reason that he was arrested. And he was out then on $1,000 bond. And then he drove his car through that Christmas parade and killed 6 people and injured 50 people. And everybody, I think, agrees, other than, woke leftist attorney generals like Josh Kaul and district attorneys like John Chisholm, that is a terrible amount for that person, a terribly low amount. Mm-hmm. The problem is Chisholm says, well, it was an inappropriate low amount. But the record reflects that this is the norm in his office. And the record reflects, with respect to Josh Kaul, that this is sort of a policy position that prosecutors and leftists in our sort of government structure have decided to take. They think that these criminals deserve the benefit of the doubt. And I've even heard them say that, bond or bail is racist, and that it impacts poor people, and that it and so they've been trying to go to low to no bond or bail. And you see this with a policy position, and it's bleeding out across Wisconsin. You even see it infecting conservative areas. And if you talk to law enforcement, even in our area, Ben, and you talk to them quietly, you talk to deputies, they will tell you how angry they are at the cases that they build, and then the people that they arrest are out on low bond or sig bond the next day, and how angry they are and how demoralizing that is. And it's a place that needs serious reform.
Well, so my understanding, because we've had John Yackel, sort of kind of judge on a few times, and he kind of walked us through what bonds were. This was about a year ago. We've had some district attorneys on, and certainly some sheriffs and others in law enforcement that have kind of discussed this a little bit. But you're right. They can only kind of say so much offline or privately. There's a lot more strong opinions there. So a typical situation is, I'm driving and so we're not even talking about a serious one, but serious, but not a murder or something. But I get pulled over and I'm arrested for meth, and it's I get arrested. I'm in jail, and then I have a bond hearing, usually in a few days. Then the judge at that point, I'm assuming the state then can say we want this much as a bond, and the defense, if there's a defense attorney, says like my attorney would say, well, we want this much. Judge makes a decision. This is what it is. My understanding is the bond that is set is largely, not only, but largely to make sure that in this case me, would appear for my initial hearing. The next hearing. It's just to make sure that I'm coming back. Now, there's tons of variables here. From your knowledge, is that kind of how it works?
To some extent, and I think that's the problem. So we have this goofy provision in our state constitution that constrains to some extent how this will work and how judges can impose, higher amounts and for what reasons. And so you've actually seen some legislators who have proposed a constitutional amendment to change that, to give some more flexibility and ability for higher bond amounts for people that are repeat offenders or violent offenders, or to make sure that we can keep people off the street who are a danger to their communities. And but even if you have that, Ben, even if, let's just say we lived in a perfect world and you had all the flexibility you wanted as a judge or a district attorney, it doesn't help to have that flexibility when you have this kind of cancer spreading across our state of a philosophy that says we don't want to impose high bail, high bond on people. We don't want to do this. We want low bail or no bail. And that, I think, is the major issue, is we have too many prosecutors who have bought into this nonsense. And look, everybody in the world, I think, that makes a mistake when they're a young person, we can all say, well, maybe they need a second chance. But you certainly don't need a 50th chance, right?
Right.
And I would say you don't necessarily even need a second chance if your first chance was something as severe as it is sometimes. And so I think we have to have a reset on our view of the criminal justice system, to be that the point of the criminal justice system is to keep our communities safe. The point of the criminal justice system is to keep criminals behind bars. The point of the criminal justice system is to make sure that victims get their day in court. I'm not worried about the criminals. And the criminals all have a criminal defense attorney, right? They don't need the prosecutor to also be their attorney. They need the prosecutor to be the guy that's representing who? The state, right? Every criminal charge says state v. thus and such. They're supposed to be representing us, not the criminal. And so when I hear sometimes even Republican prosecutors say, well, I want to make sure that we're not incarcerating people, and I'm like, come on, there are people that just have to be incarcerated. Yeah. That just has to be part of the deal. And so we have to begin the process of changing the narrative, changing the mindset from top to bottom of what our criminal justice system ought to be about.
You had mentioned the Waukesha parade incident, and that was kind of this catalyst, or the thing that kind of brought it in the spotlight. I believe that is absolutely true. I'm a little concerned, not concerned, but I'm not a big fan of knee-jerk reactions. We saw that horrific situation with George Floyd in the city's a year and a half ago or so. I mean, that was just a tragedy. That was horrific, just terrible all the way around. And that really catapulted the defund the police, and cops are not systematically, but they're racist, etc. Like just unilaterally, right? And everybody wanted change. And I'm not saying change doesn't, that change isn't needed. But is this a knee-jerk reaction? Is our bond system really failing or not doing its job? Is this hey, it's a campaign, it's an election cycle. There was that situation down in Waukesha. Let's make this the talking point now.
No, it is failing. And long before what happened in Waukesha, you don't have to go to southeastern Wisconsin, to Milwaukee, to larger cities, Madison, where clearly there's a major crime problem that we hear about every day, right? Milwaukee, once again this year, set a murder record. Milwaukee will end this year with more car thefts, not per capita, but in raw numbers, more car thefts than Chicago. But it's not just there. If you talk to deputies in Barron County, if you talk to deputies in Polk County, if you talk to deputies in Dunn County, and they feel comfortable that you're not going to leak that you've talked to them, they will tell you that there's a major problem even in their counties. And they see it every day with the revolving door with meth and other issues like that, and the property crimes that come from meth. So yeah, maybe we're not dealing with the huge murder issues that they have in Milwaukee, but we're dealing with significant crime. And these guys spend a lot of time and effort working these cases just to see the same people coming back around. If you just go to CCAP and pull up somebody's name, somebody that's in the court, chances are that person's name will appear time after time after time after time.
Typically.
And it is time for us to say, look, there are just some people that have to sit, because while it costs money to incarcerate them, it costs more money to society, and it costs more harm and lives and all of those things that we're trying to protect in our community by not having them incarcerated.
So you're running for Attorney General in Wisconsin. You get elected. How do you fix it?
Well, there's a couple of really important things that we have to do immediately. So Josh Call has cut a significant amount from DOJ, from its prosecutor corps. So the first thing that we're going to do is rebuild that to where Attorney General Schimmel had it, and then we're going to add to it. Because again, if you talk to local law enforcement or prosecutors, they will tell you that they're overwhelmed and they need help. So by adding prosecutors to DOJ, we can send them back up. So one of the things that Schimmel did maybe halfway between his term was he put a special prosecutor for northwestern Wisconsin. I think he was housed in Eau Claire, but he would work big drug cases alongside of the prosecutors in various counties. We can do more of that. The other thing that, of course, they have at DOJ that needs to be rebuilt is the special agents that help do criminal investigations. So we can add a bunch of special agents to help local law enforcement with their complex investigations. Remember, we have a double-edged sword problem here. We have rising crime, but because of the idiotic defund the police stuff, we also have demoralized law enforcement. We have serious recruitment and retention problems.
Yeah.
So we have to, as a state, prioritize this and backfill from DOJ some of the losses that we've seen in our local law enforcement. And, people don't like the idea of spending more government money on this or that. And I'm a fiscal hawk, but the primary responsibility of state government is public health, safety, and welfare. That is the primary role. And if we're not adequately funding law enforcement and we don't have adequate numbers of law enforcement on the street, we see the kind of rising crime that we have today, and it has to get fixed. It has to be a budget priority. So that's number one. And number two, we have to talk about this differently, Ben. When we have an attorney general like Josh Call, who literally throws law enforcement under the bus, when Jacob Blake was
literally.
shot. Well, I mean, it was pretty literal when he just stood by and let Kenosha burn down and did nothing about it. Let Madison be looted and rioted. They had a Democrat state senator who was beaten unconscious, and he didn't lift a finger. But that's bad. But I think it just as bad is by saying things like that he said about law enforcement and standing up for Jacob Blake, who was a criminal, who was armed, and everybody that actually investigated it showed that shooting was justified. And he immediately sides with Jacob Blake against law enforcement. That's a real problem, and we have to reset that support system for law enforcement so they feel like they're supported and they feel like they have people there that will have their back. Right now, if you talk to deputies, they will tell you that they're terrified to go out on the street because they think if they shoot somebody, if they have to, DOJ won't have their back. Josh Call will take the side of the woke leftist mob as opposed to doing a fair investigation from DCI of that police-involved shooting. We have to change that, or we're going to lose. All of our law enforcement officers will quit, and we won't get. Just talk to them about the recruiting classes that we're having now.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
Yep. Dave Wilson. Oh, shoot. Hold on. Where's Dave? There we go. Dave Wilson, I was speaking with him recently about those strategies. Tracy Finch, Burnett County Sheriff. I have so much respect for her. I don't know about Barron County. I think they're doing fine. I mean, Fitzy hasn't really brought that up in terms of staffing stuff. But all the other ones that I talked to, it went from we're concerned to, okay, this is becoming a problem to, okay, we're almost in panic mode at this point because in 2 to 5 years from now, it's not going to be good. We have to figure this out right now. There's a couple of questions that came up here, but I'll get to those in just a second. I want to wrap this up with, so you've talked about your Attorney General, and these are the things that we need to do. We, as in the state and the Attorney General's office. 2 questions here. Number 1, can the Attorney General, so in this case it would be you, do you have the authority to do this? Do you just walk in first day and you sign some things and done? We're going to make this a focus, or is this stuff that has to get passed through the legislature? Does it go to a vote? How does that work? Can you actually get what you said that you wanted to be done to address actually done?
Yeah, a little of both. So yes, I believe the Attorney General has significant authority for how DOJ is run. Remember, at the end of the day, Attorney General is the CEO of a gigantic agency. And so on day one, we will prioritize the prosecutors and restoring the prosecutorial function. On day one, we will add agents special agents to assist local law enforcement. On day one, we will make sure that the crime lab is providing that support function that it has to for local law enforcement. But the things that need to be changed, and this is why I think that I would do a really good job at this as Attorney General, we do have to go to the legislature. And guess what? I have great relationships with members of the legislature from having served there. And I think I'm the kind of person that they know and that they will trust. And when I go to the legislature early in the budget process, remember, the election's in November of 2022, January of 2023, we get sworn in, and February starts that new budget process. So I will go right to the legislature with my budget priorities and talk to them about these issues that I would think they have to address. And I'll tell you, they will have a lot of trust and faith in what I tell them. And because I've built up a lot of goodwill with a lot of those folks over the years, and I'm very confident that I will work with the legislature to get these things done better than any other candidate or incumbent that's out there.
Okay, and then the follow-up to that would be, does it matter if... Okay, so anytime we do these hypotheticals, that's usually when things get taken out of context. So just play along. Governor Evers, Tony Evers, gets reelected. Adam Jarchow gets elected Wisconsin Attorney General. Does that change anything in terms of your ability to get anything done? Does who's sitting as the governor have any impact on you able to get those things done?
It's going to change a lot of things for the ability of Tony Evers to get done, because I'm going to sue him and his agencies a lot for continuing to violate the rights of Wisconsin citizens. Now, Governor Evers has signed both Republican budgets. So let's just say that we have Republican majorities, we have a Governor Evers, let's hope not, but let's just say that happens, and an Adam Jarchow Attorney General. So I will go to the legislature, I will work with them to fund the agency and the priorities that we have in the agency. I doubt that Tony Evers would line item veto those items out, because we would spend a lot of time with law enforcement talking about how Tony Evers has once again abandoned law enforcement, has abandoned our communities, and has sided with criminals. So I think we would put enough pressure on him that he would not line item veto out the priorities that we would have.
Got it. Here's a couple of questions I'll get to here. Kevin, Adam, do you have a plan for fighting the meth problem locally? So is that something that, again, as an attorney general, you would be able to do? So again, that's locally, but the meth situation right now, does that tie into anything that attorney general falls under that umbrella?
No, for sure. Two things. So if you talk to any law enforcement, they will tell you where meth comes from. Used to be, remember, Ben, the case that we would make meth in Wisconsin. We had these meth labs. Not the case anymore. It comes from Mexico across the border. This is one of the reasons why so many sheriffs were so interested in building Trump's border wall and making sure that wall got finished. And remember, President Trump actually put that in the law. And Joe Biden is violating that law. And you have some attorneys general from around the country who are suing Joe Biden for violating that law. It's more than just an immigration issue, which is a huge issue in and of itself, having that open border. It is a meth issue. So I will join that lawsuit immediately to force Joe Biden to follow the law, and to follow our immigration laws and to complete that wall. So hopefully that would begin to slow down the flow of meth into our communities, but I think you'd be naive to say that it will stop it.
Right.
So at the local level, again, law enforcement needs the support of DOJ. So we're going to have to add some prosecutors to DOJ to help local law enforcement make those cases. We're likely going to have to grapple with the idea of having more beds in prisons so that we can incarcerate people. And certainly when they're in prison, we can have a treatment option, but they have to be off the street. So we're not having law enforcement dealing with the same people time and time again. And then, of course, we add to that law enforcement function at DOJ to assist our local sheriffs and police departments.
Here's another question. I think it's the bottom. Where do you stand on support for funding from the state level and or federal level to ensure livable wages that support the field of early care and education?
I'm not sure that question has anything to do with DOJ. Maybe I'm misunderstanding
push
it.
U.S. Senate to support. Yeah, I don't think so. Or maybe it does. So that's some of those things we just don't know. Like, I don't know everything that an attorney general does. So is this one of those that call your local legislator or somebody that's or either in or that is campaigning and running for?
Yeah, I was trying to read the question and it kind of went off, but it said something about pushing senators to support child care providers. Here's what I would say.
Okay.
The function of the attorney general has been misused by Josh Kaul. Instead of doing the actual job, Josh Kaul runs around and acts as kind of a spokesman for woke leftists. And that cannot be the job of the attorney general. So if you want the United States Senate to support this policy or that policy that really has nothing to do with the law enforcement function or the function of DOJ, that's fine. Go to your U.S. Senator or go to your member of Congress. The function of the attorney general needs to be hyper-focused on the functions that are in that office, supporting law enforcement, holding the Biden administration accountable for its overreach, standing up for parents who are trying to be engaged in their kids' education, making sure that we have election integrity and our election laws are followed. I mean, that's the function of DOJ, and that's the function of the attorney general. And those are the things that I would be focused on.
Sure. Warren Tuttle, he's a deputy in Washburn County. Oh, and he's running for sheriff in Washburn County as well.
Nice.
Saying good morning. When someone violates condition of the bond. Oh, yeah. So, man, that is a great question. So this is something we just started and some other shows. When someone violates conditions of the bond, where does the money they forfeit go? So I've actually, Fitzy brought this up, it got brought up during one of our Positive Tuesday shows 3 weeks ago, I think, about, Yeah, so how does that work? Do they forfeit? And I know that 50 really was focused on, well, I don't want to misquote him. I'll have to go back and hear exactly what he said. But we really need to kind of look at that. Adam, I don't know if you know much about that, but I know that I talked to Shannon Anderson, who's the clerk of court in Washburn County, and asked, is there like a printout of how much money was brought in? Where does it go? And the more and more I look into this, the more it's like a rabbit hole. I haven't yet to actually figure this out at all. So I'm trying to piece it together. I don't have a lot of time for investigative journalism, but this is something that we're really trying to kind of nail down because I don't really know. After 3 weeks of looking into it, I still don't know. So from your understanding, is that something that should also be looked at and or addressed is where does that money go? Does it really get forfeited? And if so, how is it allocated?
Yeah, what I've heard from a fair number of folks that are involved in the criminal justice system is oftentimes when you have, what you refer to as a bail jump or there should be a forfeit, the money's not taken because they know that it came from the family, and so we feel bad about it. It's like, well, this is crazy. So yeah, I do think we have to have a hard look at that, and almost certainly we need reform to that, to the way that works.
Yeah.
Yes.
So just for people, just so you know, I assumed, which that's on me, that there's a bond that it's set, and there's let's say a $5,000 cash bond. You don't show up for your hearing. They have to go and find you. Maybe there's a felony bail jump or something, whatever, and they finally get you and you come back in. That $5,000, yeah, I just assumed that meant you had to forfeit or you already had to place that $5,000. So now guess what? You just lost that. That's the incentive for coming back, because if you don't, you already gave us that $5,000 or somebody else did. We're taking it. Now we're going to set another one, maybe like a $10,000 one, to make sure you show up for your next one. That's not how it works, man. Mm-hmm. That's crazy.
Right.
Like, what's the point of having one?
Right. Well, and worse than that, it's this kind of, again, perverse incentive that we're sending to criminals. Look, these people work the system, and we're giving them so many opportunities to work the system, and we just have to knock it off.
Yeah. Vaccine mandates seem to be a topic again. It seemed like it was kind of, at least discussion-wise, topic-wise, it kind of seemed to fade out over the last few months. Now it's coming back up again. What are you seeing out there regarding the vaccine mandates, and do you have any concerns?
I do. It's a hugely concerning issue. Look, if you want to have a vaccine, have a vaccine. That's your choice. If you don't want to have a vaccine, don't have a vaccine. That should be your choice. I mean, my goodness, this is America, and we have, again, the Biden administration illegally imposing 3 different vaccine mandates so far. Actually, there's a 4th that I'm going to talk about that people haven't really heard about. So the 3 that everyone's heard about is the federal OSHA mandate that applies to employers with 100 employees or more. Mm-hmm. There's the healthcare worker mandate that's from CMS. So if any healthcare agency gets that kind of government money, it applies, and the federal contractor mandate. All of those have been stayed to some extent because of actions of Republicans attorney general from around the country who have been suing the Biden administration over that. There's a Supreme Court case. The hearing, I think, is January 7th, United States Supreme Court case to address those issues. One that people haven't really heard about is they've been doing it at Head Start now. And so we're losing Head Start employees. And I got a call from a local board member who is terrified that we're going to lose all of these Head Start employees because, again, federal money. And just the other day, Joe Biden said, well, if his health people recommend a vaccine mandate to use domestic air travel, he will implement that. First of all, that is totally illegal to do, for Joe Biden to do without the Congress passing a law. And it's un-American. We don't tell people you can't travel, you can't go see grandma in Florida because you haven't had a shot. That's totally baloney. And all of these things need to be challenged vigorously. Of course, our attorney general won't do a thing about it, won't lift a finger. And, we only have 366 more days until we have a new attorney general sworn in.
But
and
who's
if
counting?
It's me, on day 300, on that very day, I will join those lawsuits, if they're not already over, to make sure that Wisconsin's voice is heard in these mandates.
Well, hold on now. A little while ago, you talked about the kind of the role and not the importance, but what attorney general really does. I mean, here's like the top 2 or 3. One of those things in there you said was about the health and safety of the citizens of, in this case, a state. Wouldn't this fall under the priority of health and safety?
Of course not.
Okay.
No.
Just asking.
No.
I don't know.
So there's two major structural issues here. One, the federal government does not have a role here. The states have a role. The federal government is supposed to be a limited government of enumerated powers, and the rest of it falls to the states. So the federal government should not be involved in doing any of those kind of mandates. And secondly, how do we pass laws in this country, Ben? Do we just have the governor or the president or some unelected bureaucrat sign a piece of paper? Or do we actually have the legislature, the Congress, pass a bill, majorities in both houses, and then signed?
Typically, that's how it works, yeah.
These, typically not anymore, because we just govern by executive decree now, and we have to have attorneys general who will fight back against not only the structural violations of federalism by allowing states to handle these issues, but also the separation of powers issue is a major item that has to be looked at and has to be challenged, because we have to have, that's how we protect liberty, right? That's how we protect people's individual liberty, is making sure that not one individual person can do these things, that they have to go through the legislative process, and that their elected representatives weigh in on these issues.
We have, I think, maybe a follow-up to that. That other one, can you read that? If it goes away, I'll put it back up here, but...
No, I can't read that. Isn't that the same one?
Yeah, it's a different one, but the same topic. If you represent the state and issue legal advice to state agencies, got it. There we go. DCF under a state agency. Yeah, I'm sorry. I wish I knew more about this, Shasta. I have no knowledge of it. And
I'm
Adam,
not sure
is there
what the question is.
Adam, is there a way for Shasta to be able to reach out to you, to email you? To maybe this isn't something that I'm not really understanding what it is, that she can, I don't know, email your something to maybe get some more information about this. Where would you recommend that she go?
She could go to our campaign website and send an email to the
and that's
email address.
AdamJarchow.com, right? That's your website? Yep. Yeah, sure. Yep. Sorry about that, Shasta. I think there was one more maybe here. When repeat offenders, why does it seem they never receive sticker penalties? I don't know what that is. It seems like the state has gone down a road of catch and release just to be arrested for the same crime. All right, sorry, I thought that was a question there. Just saw the question mark at the end. Real quick, Gableman election probe, where do you stand on that?
So what I have said is that we have, his is the fourth investigation. So we have the nonpartisan Legislative Audit Bureau that did its report. We had the Wisconsin Institute for Law and Liberty that did its report. Sheriff Schmeling in Racine County did an investigation and has made some referrals. And now we have this investigation that Justice Gableman is undertaking. And each one of those investigations has uncovered significant election malfeasance and significant failures to follow the law. And those things are very important for us to know, and it shouldn't be a partisan issue. It shouldn't be a partisan issue for people to understand. And let's talk about what Sheriff Schmeling uncovered, that when elderly people in nursing homes are having their votes stolen, and I don't think there's any dispute that happened in those nursing homes in Racine County and likely happened in other nursing homes across the state, that is wrong. It is illegal, and we should have an attorney general who's willing to investigate and, if necessary, get the proper tools from the legislature to prosecute people who are breaking our election laws. That shouldn't be a partisan issue. It also shouldn't be a partisan issue with one of the things that Justice Gableman has been focusing on, which is the funding of the election process in 5 of our largest cities by Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
That is a major issue, because the deeper you dive into that and find out exactly what was happening and the structural advantage that was given to Democrat-leaning groups in their get out the vote efforts, it is a major problem. You can't give one party real-time voter data so they can do ballot harvesting and not give it to another party. All that people expect and rightfully expect, whether they're Republicans or Democrats, is that it's an equal and fair playing field. And if you lose an election, you'll lose an election. But it is not right when you're playing on two different playing fields, and people then say, well, I'm not going to accept the election results. And that is detrimental to the entire foundation of our republic. People have to be able to trust our elections.
I read 2 days ago. That was the first time I actually read quite a bit about that situation. I think they called it the Wisconsin 5, right? That Zuckerberg and Facebook and what they'd done. Because I've heard about it, read a few things, but I read a couple of very lengthy articles really breaking it down. When I was finished, I was actually like, okay, I'm a little concerned. That's not really how it's supposed to work.
It is.
Yeah,
and
that
the
was a
problem
little
with
weird.
it, Ben, is it's really esoteric, right? You have to really delve into it to understand that, because most people think about these grants in terms of, well, we had COVID, and so Mark Zuckerberg is a really nice rich guy.
Yeah, on the
He gave
surface,
some
it
money.
seemed legit. And it was legit. I'm saying it seemed fine. But the more I read about it, the more I'm like, wait a minute now, hold on. Wait a minute, what?
Right. I mean, because they termed it as COVID, helping them with COVID, and it was not at all how it was used. And
Well, a little bit it was. Technically, a little bit was.
Yeah, like 1%.
Yeah,
But the clawback provisions in the contract that was signed that essentially said you have to do exactly what we tell you to do or we get the money back, that can never be in a public contract, that kind of clawback provision. I mean, we have clerks in these counties that run and villages and cities that run these elections for a reason. We don't let, partisan left-wing billionaires run our elections for a reason. And frankly, I wouldn't want partisan right-wing billionaires to run our elections, because then all the Democrats would think that our election process was fraudulent. We have to have free and fair elections.
You'd think so. Can you sell that to people without sounding like a Trump homer? Right? Because those things are tied together. They just are. And I think it's less now than it was 6 months ago and a year and 2 years ago. But those things seem to be tied together for a lot of people. We really need to have these fair elections. And come on, you're just a Trump homer, a fanboy, right? And you're just trying to kill. The election was stolen, etc. Do you think we're at that point, or you're able to convince people this is a big deal? Take the whole Trump thing out of it. Are you able to do that, you think?
Well, I think the problem with anything that we talk about politically is everybody goes to their own corners. And
true.
So it's very tough to talk about these issues and have people actually think through, well, what would happen if the other side did this? How would I react if the shoe was on the other foot? And if we can talk about it and get people to think about it in those terms, maybe we would have a chance to persuade people. But, I think what we actually have to have is we have to get rid of Governor Evers, because he vetoed some really common sense election integrity bills that were passed. And we have to get rid of Josh Kaul, because he just refuses to lift a finger to help with this.
So I have a very important question for you now as we wrap up here. Who came up with the color scheme, the orange and the blue? I've never seen that before.
That's what I always did for my assembly races.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I don't remember that.
Yep.
Which is refreshing to see, because usually it's always the same colors. And also this. So there's your campaign photo, and I'm not laughing at you, but there's a flag behind you, and I'm just wondering, is that like mandatory now? Because I don't think I've ever seen anybody run for anything unless there's a flag behind them. Like if you just had like a brick wall or just a tree or something, it's, well, they're not American because I'm not voting for that guy. Is it one of those, like, you literally say, okay, let's get a campaign photo. Well, where's the flag?
That's right. Yeah, right on. Yeah.
Is that it?
People have expectations of people that run for office, and so you have to meet those expectations.
Last question here. Why should people who are watching right now, our viewers, or just anyone in general, I guess, specifically in Wisconsin, why should they really care about the AG's race? I mean, it's not the governor's race. It's not a local race like a sheriff or a judge or a district attorney. It's attorney general. Who cares? Why should they care?
Oh, my goodness. This office has so much ability to impact the everyday lives of everyday people. So we've already talked about election integrity and what that office can do. We've talked about the violent crime that we're seeing and how, look, people in communities all across Wisconsin are impacted by this crime wave, and we have to get it under control. And I think there's no better place than the Attorney General's office to really begin the process of backing the badge and fighting this violent crime. And I think we can lower that crime level. It will have a on everyday people, parents who are fed up with with this racist curriculum that they see in their school, and having, being called terrorists because they had the gall to go to a school board meeting and speak up. I mean, they should have an attorney general that will stand with them. We should have an attorney general that will fight back against Washington, D.C. overreach. Have you ever had an impact from a regulatory agency as a business owner or as a hunter like DNR? We should have and I think this is what that question was getting to, that you and I couldn't quite understand what the question was. The attorney general has significant ability to have an impact on these regulatory agencies like DNR. And I think what they were talking about was DCF, to bind the bureaucrats in those agencies to actually follow the law. Oh, that has a massive impact. Just think about hunters in northern Wisconsin who, are having their hunting dogs, or farmers that are having cattle killed by wolves. And Josh Call won't even appeal the liberal ruling from Madison that outlawed the wolf hunt. These are everyday, on the ground issues that impact people's lives. And so people should care desperately about who their attorney general is.
Adam, thanks so much for coming on. What's coming up next for you? Are you going to be somewhere in our area doing your campaign thing?
Yeah, events and more events. January and February.
What are you doing for New Year's Eve?
Full of events. Probably working. I'm sure my wife will have me at work somewhere.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Going to bed early as usual. We just turn the clocks ahead a little bit, and the kids won't even know the difference. That's wonderful thing about New Year's Eve. It gets dark so fast here. But like 8:30, we just move the clocks ahead 4 hours, and they really think that it's midnight.
You need to have a more exciting life.
Oh, I know. Yeah, no, but it doesn't incorporate nature at all. I'll be perfectly happy. Exciting life inside. Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Happy New Year.
For DrydenWire.com, I'm Ben Dryden, and you've been watching Dryden Wire Live. Special thank you to my guest today, candidate for Wisconsin Attorney General, friend of the show, Adam Jarchow. You can learn more about Adam by visiting his website at adamjarchow.com. I will be back and see you next Tuesday morning when Barron County Sheriff Chris Fitzgerald and I will be back for our 76th episode of Positive Tuesday with Ben and Fitzy Show. So until then, maybe have a blessed day and a very, very happy new year.